Good evening. Good evening and welcome to the Thursday, March 9, 2023. The Select Board, Select Planning Board, the Situate Planning Board and the Select Board hearing room at Town Hall. I'm not going to read all the little speech because I heard today that I would have to do that. So there is a general public welcome to attend via Zoom. It will be on, it's Facebook Live, it will be on the TV tomorrow. We have a posted agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We have a continued public hearing of the site plan administrative review of a special permit for mixed-use building and multi-family building, stormwater permit in the village center in the district, Bush Gateway District, Greenwood Village Center Sub-District, and Gateway Business District, Alphabet. 7 McDonald's Terrace, 33 Driftway. Good evening. We have a very long meeting. We'd like to get a lot of stuff done tonight. I'm hoping that we can read through a list of what we would like to accomplish, and we can either address it individually or do it as a whole. So I know the first thing we want to talk about is we haven't received the water and sewer studies for the project yet.
Can I introduce everyone, Patty, so everyone knows who you are?
Oh, sure, sorry.
Yeah. No. I'm Bill Armberger, I'm here with my colleague, Matt Mitchell. Also, we have John Sullivan, the owner and applicant of the property. And Greg Morse is here to do our engineering. Our traffic engineer, Jason Adams, is here, and Jamie Kelleher, architect. And just by way of brief summary, and I know some of the board members know this, since the last time we met has been not only with John Chesia and with the traffic engineer, there's been exchange and comments gone back. A few of them, I think Greg Morse and Jason are gonna tell us where we stand on those things. Karen has also been kind enough to tell us outside of the two consulting and some other issues that the board is there, and we have some answers for those and also get some input. There's been 2 meetings with the design review committee, and as part of when Jamie Kelleher talks, he's actually done with handouts. I gave Karen a letter, which the design review committee, I think, is going to be reviewing on Tuesday, which shows on the design basis on the step back, so visually you can see it's just these dormers, how much of it is outside of there, and 6% of the volume of the building, and just to get from the board's standpoint, whatever final input that you need, so we can do whatever other work we need. So, so you want Patty to give them the order that you have?
Yeah, so I go to those type of review committee meetings, and they're very informative, and they really help us a lot. So, I know that Karen has spoken with you about this as well, so let's go through this so we can finally get some answers and maybe get some stuff settled. I've seen the traffic that you guys got to review by Zoom, no?
No.
Our trustee,
No,
our
our-
Kirsten is on, she's online and she is co-host, so she can meet and unmute herself when we're ready for her.
So, why don't we start with the water and sewer study, that I know is kind of in progress, do you know where we are on that?
Yeah, that's something that's being worked on, and the board should have it soon. I think the analysis of this, you're also reviewing an unrelated project at 61. And so I think the information will be similar to that, and the same criteria and format, so that we expect to have that in the near future.
The other issue that I really am concerned about and interested in are affordable units. What were required, so can we talk about?
I don't know if you want, Jamie's designated them, and he has handouts from a recent plan that actually puts a number, so.
Yeah, why don't we do that, because
Why
it's
not?
important to us, because it takes a long time, and we want to talk about your agent, who you're going to use. We prefer that you use Metro West Collaborative, because they do everything else in town.
And that's fine.
Monitoring agent.
That's fine.
Yeah, because makes it easier for when we're trying to collect the information, so if you'd like to address that.
Can we just point out the
Yeah, just,
affordable, okay.
Just while he's getting it ready, I did speak with Metro West Collaborative, and they are willing to take on new clients. And they do take all our, we have 3 projects with local action units, and they have all of them.
Okay, great.
So she's interested.
Yeah, can you give us contact information? Hold on, please.
Okay, so I'll just briefly go through the locations that we're proposing. Total of 4 units, 3 of them are in the larger building and 1 in the rear building. The first one we've identified as a 1-bedroom on the first level. Second affordable unit is a 2-bedroom in this location on the second floor. And there is one modification to the plan that we've added a balcony to that unit on both levels that was not previously there. And the third floor affordable unit be in that same location, 2-bedroom as well. And fourth. Jump ahead to floor plans. Apologize, it seems to have these other order.
Any other building though?
It is on the other building. There are 3 units on each level. For some reason, I'm actually missing that sheet.
How many bedrooms is that one?
The back building are all 2-bedroom units, so there's 2 bedrooms on that. I believe we're showing that one on the second floor.
I'm sorry, so the back building has one,
1 affordable unit.
okay, yep, and that's 2 bedrooms.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so all the affordable units gonna be 80% AMI, or are any of them gonna be lower than 80% AMI?
Oh,
Well, first question I'd have on that, usually 80%, what is the board's preference, or what's the thought process on it?
well, Karen and I had an interesting discussion, and she can tell you about what.
Well, because we're in the Boston metro area, 80% AMI seems, what is designated as affordable is, in a lot of people's opinion, not affordable. But because we're in the Boston area. You know, if you went down to 60% AMI, that's more affordable. And so, you know, our bylaw technically says you can do that, but we're asking the question. The board has been asking for a long time, how do we get the units more affordable? And so that becomes going to a different AMI. And when I talk to Metro West, she says it's done all the time. And if that happens, they prefer to be a number like 60%, something that HUD calculates.
So the answer to that is, and let's report back to that, because before we agree or not agree, we have a construction firm and lender. They've been given calculations, financing, and all these
Okay.
things. We want to weigh in with them, we'll report back. Okay?
That's
Well, we just think that would be under.
Okay.
Look at that, like, this is what it was interesting, is that we've been looking for a long time, as you know, about affordable. And, I don't know, it doesn't seem very affordable. We need to talk about construction sequencing, because it seems a little concerted up. We're really concerned, I know that Ian and I have spoken about the access off of, Driftway. It's a little steep. So you talk about construction sequencing, right?
Sure. We have a general construction sequencing on the site plans.
Yeah.
Access would be cut in, would not be a steep access, it would be a crushed stone, stabilized entrance immediately at the entrance of the site. The intent here, I think, is to build the front building first and the associated infrastructure with that, construct the parking lot in the back of that building. And then after that is constructed, Mr. Sullivan's law office moved from the existing building on McDonald Terrace to the new building on Driftway, and then we would have construction of that second building in the rear, kind of as a second phase of the project, with the parking lot already in place at that point.
Yeah, I have a question. The construction phasing as it reads now is not geared towards two buildings. That has to be looked at a little bit better. What type of earthwork do you have to do prior to getting that construction entrance in? I think that board needs to see that on the plans, because that's cut through a steep mound, whatever, and, you know, it doesn't seem, you can't go in and just put a construction entrance in.
Does it have retainage built?
No, it's not gonna need retainage for, you know, construction of the entrance there. You know,
What's the height?
the grade there off of Driftway probably goes up 2 feet or so off the back of the sidewalk, so they bring in an excavator, they'd excavate out, you know, that 2
So you
feet
just
and
gonna
that
slope
grade,
it back?
just slope back, yeah.
Isn't Craig, is most of the elevation change near the end of the cul-de-sac on the Berwick property?
There is off the end of the cul-de-sac on McDonald Terrace, it drops down about 4 feet.
Yeah, that's
To
not,
the Berwick property.
yeah, and that's not in our construction area.
No, it's not. So,
You were talking about the construction entrance coming off of
yeah,
Driftway, right?
Yeah.
correct.
So that mound that you, whatever the elevation is for the construction entrance, the highest point above that's 2 feet.
At that entrance location, yeah, it's 2 feet.
Okay. Anything else? Yeah.
And I understand the rationale about Mr. Sullivan going into the new building and then the second building is built. To me, the sequence seems to be backwards. That building, the second building is in the back of all of this. And I think it would be incredibly disruptive to build that building after everything in the front is finished. And I just don't understand why you would not do the second building either at the same time or first.
Well, two things, just, and John, if you don't mind,
No, go ahead.
The hard reality is, number one, John has a place, he can't demolish his office and have no place to make a livelihood, that's number one. Number two, it might be possible to sequence these closer together, and, but one of the things I've already met and discussed with the lenders on this, their primary security on this in advance is they wanna see this front building is, I don't know, 70% of the project or whatever it is. But doing that and doing the infrastructure at the same time makes a lot of sense. Because just on construction advances and other things, if you want us to get the advances, I mean, if you want to, we want to get the advances such you can do this and do the infrastructure. If we're building something that's 30% of the value of the, and I'm just made that number up, I'm saying it's exact, 30% of the value of this. And if whatever, 25% of this is an infrastructure cost, a construction lender is not gonna lend you this. They're gonna say, if this project isn't completed, we're not gonna give you money for utilities and asphalt here and not have a building that's an income producing building.
I just find it interesting because once you put that infrastructure in with that parking lot and the strip between, those big trucks, they're gonna have a hard time getting in and out of there.
Can I ask a question? Is there a possibility that you could do a lot of the earthwork for the back building so that the earthwork part is done prior to, you know, so then all you have to do is build the building so that the big hauling is done?
And that is my concern, is all of the hauling that would have to happen. But then you run into a situation where you are raising a house and that all has to come out of there. Now, that's not gonna go down McDonald Terrace, is it?
Why is the Phillies zone?
Excuse me?
No. fresh.
The majority of the earthwork for that second building is gonna be done when the parking lot's done. You know, all of the drainage structure is under that parking lot before it gets paved. You know, water services, sewer services, electrical services, that'll all be done, you know, before that second building is built. It'll essentially be stubbed off for connection to that building when that building, you know, is built. You know, demolition of that house isn't any more than a day or two's worth of work with a 30 yards dumpster. It's not a significant haul to, you know, excavate that foundation and the footings for that second building. There's no substantial earthwork associated with that piece of it. The parking lot is really where all the infrastructure is located, and that would all be done prior,
And then you just build the house afterwards, so to
essentially.
speak. Yeah.
Yeah.
Carry it across the Brigham Bay parking.
So we put clarification, as Karen suggested, in the sequencing if you want.
I'd
Yeah,
like
we
that.
should know what that sequencing is. Is it possible you would end up building the front and having significant delays or never build the back? Is that, you're sequencing it that way in order to sort of,
No, the real reason for the sequencing is, you know, employment driven. This is where John's business has been for a set period of time. And he wants to remain on site and move seamlessly from there into.
I get that. And you're planning on phasing this or sequencing it.
Yeah, well,
But just hear me out. We've been through this process before where people have said we're gonna build phase one and then phase two, and phase two never gets done, and some benefits of that come in phase two never appear. So I'm just asking is, the intent is to build out the whole site, phase
Correct.
one and two, not to build phase one and see if it's viable to build phase two.
Correct. And so what I'm saying is that it's probably,
That's all.
That's
it's
fine.
probably a misnomer. There isn't a phase. It's just a sequencing, that's all.
Is that okay? So then
For now.
For now.
But even when you're building the back piece of it, the entrance is still gonna be from your what
Correct.
construction and everything. Are you gonna have a separate construction entrance to the main entrance, or are you just gonna use that?
You mean when you're building the rear building?
Just use the main entrance. It'll be a fully paved commercial grade parking lot at that point.
Because you come in off of McDonald Terrace and take out the end unit, that's such a tight curve, right? Okay. So we just, and I can see you say the same thing, we just need some kind of assurance that both of these, we know that Mr. Sullivan wants to go to the second building, that's gonna be where his office is, so we can pretty much assure that that's gonna happen with him.
Correct.
So we did talk about the rating to install the construction entrance and Mr. Pritchard and the engineers are satisfied with that. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, as long as, 2 feet's not much, as long as they, build the right sort of slope back, so it's not, 2 feet doesn't slough on into the road and stuff, right? So I think that seems fine, and of course, all of it requires stormwater management, right? So
So
that'll be the key here, right, is managing the stormwater, particularly as you get 2 different, components going on.
So, and we did talk about the design review, so we will meet with them again on Tuesday. So we know, JD had told us it's a kind of a high setback, whatever it is, it's very confusing terminology that we use. The setback is high on a 3-story building. So we are waiting to hear from you about how much is not compliant in why, you should go.
He's ready to talk about that
Oh,
right
you
now.
can talk about that now, okay. Gary, okay? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
You will be getting you will get a memo from the design review committee after they have written it, so you will have their recommendations.
We're waiting on that.
Yeah, right. The
So,
design review committee did like the building, but their stumbling blocks seem to be how much does the setback, step back not needed and why? And that wasn't answered at the meeting, and so now tonight, hopefully we'll get some answers on that, and then design review will get some of that on Tuesday.
We, at the request of design review committee, you were asked to create a simplified diagram showing the section cut through the main section of the building along with a front elevation that indicates any areas that had any non-conformity with the step back zone. So I think the intent that we had from the beginning was to provide a building that, you know, as well as possible meets the intent of that step back, which means that, you know, from the visual of the front of the building, we're vanishing back from the road. And it was pointed out to us that we did include some of these sort of, you know, architectural elements to break up, you know, with, as the zoning calls it, vertical articulation. And that the areas that you see in white are the portions of those dormers and gable features that would be popping through the sort of step back zone that we show in green. And doing the calculation told us that those are taking up approximately 6% of the total area of that front facade. And so this is essentially what we've come up with to try to illustrate that piece of that design item.
What's the cross section? Where is that?
So the cross section is shown, there's a small section marker right there on the elevation showing where
And the
the.
green is the required setback.
Right, so on the section, we're showing the actual steps. And then kind of creating that diagonal line that the steps, you know, create, since we have sort of a sloped roof building. And one thing that we kind of talked about that I'll point out, you know, regarding this building is that rather than doing a 4-story building, we decided to stay with 3. And so, you know, architecturally, it made the most sense to try to do a building that simply had, you know, what you call, you know, 2.5-story aesthetic to it. Made it a little bit harder to kind of perfectly fit it into the step, but the midpoint of the main roof that you see outlined here is still falling down within that zone. And the midpoint would be what we consider the actual building height on the pitched roof. So really the only item that the design review committee wanted to be discussed was that we were offering these sort of, as I call them, architectural, you know, elements, and then feature these 2 kind of gable features, which are actually that's an item that comes, you know, later in that design section 750 of the zoning, where it actually asks us for, and that it's better explained in the letter, but it does require that a building that is longer than 50 feet include a projected vertical element one for each 50 feet of the building. So that's sort of what the intent was with these features here, again, to break up the horizontal, you know, effect of a building this size. So
How far do they extend?
in this case, these extend, I believe, like 1 foot 6 inches from the main front wall of the building, just to kind of give it a little bit of depth and a little bit of the vertical articulation. And so I think, yeah, generally, design review committee, the feeling we got was that they felt that the design itself was appropriate, but felt that this was an item that needed to be quantified and just reviewed so that we could make sure that we felt it was appropriate.
Our big concern, of course, is always that we know that you're gonna do more than one, but that's the issue, so. We are understood.
You're presenting this to the design review committee?
Yep.
And us?
Maybe that you stated, yeah. That will be a final hopefully meeting with them.
Yeah, I hope so.
hopefully.
I mean, they did look like,
They did like-
they did like the building, but
Yeah.
just needed, had to quantify.
Yeah.
Because if there's, has to be a waiver sought.
Yeah.
The board needs to know how much and why.
So, and I know part of design review, which is not part of this, is JP, which else, I get a little confused with these three buildings.
Right, me too.
What is decided on this building, I forget.
So this building, and we did present some material choices. We have the brick, for the lowest level. Presented a few samples at the meeting and seemed like we had a consensus on the general sort of red brick, with a little more of a, kind of a, rougher traditional texture and a little bit variation to the colors. And then the upper portions is a fiber cement or hardy clapboard in a light sort of beige color to go with the warm red of brick. On the roof, we were looking at sort of a neutral, darker, grayish brown on that. So that's the material choice. While we're on this, there were a couple updates to this that were requested by the design review board that weren't on the package you got previously. We updated landscaping to the best of our ability to kind of reflect the updated landscape plan. We came to an agreement that we would remove signage that was being proposed on the building faces, and that would probably be more minimal signage, either sign that's installed in the grass or some smaller signs on windows. And we just added some decorative brackets to the balconies to kind of give that a little more of a traditional feel, so.
So when you look at this, where is this, how far away is the second building from this building? Can you give us is it where Karen is, or is it where the door is?
Yeah, I mean, essentially that building is just out of the frame over here, and we just couldn't really get a great view that showed both, buildings together, so that's why we're not. But I mean, if needed, we could give more of a logistical.
And I've seen the second
3D.
building, and it doesn't really look like this building.
Yeah, we actually, we provided a couple three-dimensional views of this one. So, we're still working with the same kind of, shingle style language, but has more of a residential feel to the building. We would probably do the same or similar color as the clapboard material, and then just have some, white trim detailing of the gables. So,
What else said? Kim? Jeff, Bob? Kim?
But wait a minute, so is your initial impression that you would grant a waiver for this? I mean, just, so I think they need to know some feedback if that's your initial impression.
I mean, it doesn't sound like it's a lot, so I mean, I would wait, I'd like to wait to hear from the design review committee, right?
Okay,
But, generally, it doesn't seem like it's a big lift in my view, but
I agree.
I agree.
I still want
So they wanted to hear from us.
I still want the
They wanted to
design
hear from
review
us.
committee to do what they think is right and report back to us.
So they deal with, we got that, so we're gonna come to you, we're gonna tell you why, then we'll go back to them and you're gonna say, yeah, we're all gonna get together, so we're gonna build a building. That's how that's going.
No, so that's very important. We're confident that it is exactly what they want, because if you want to get these architectural features, this is what we do. Otherwise, as Jamie said in the letter, you're homogenizing the entire zone, so.
I agree. I think that, to lose the architectural features to maintain the 100% compliance is probably not gonna be worth it for the overall aesthetics of the building. So if we have to, it has to only be in 94% compliance because of the architectural features, that is something we could
overall, we see to do that, that's okay, based on design review, and we'll be back to do that.
Leaving it to the architects and the
Understood.
design review to report back.
And I can
I
tell
don't
you,
know what other
this is a really,
opportunities there are to make modifications and tweaks, so.
we, on this design review committee, three, practicing architects. And so when this architect talks to those architects, it's a really interesting high level of conversation, and you're listening to, when I'm thinking I'm a librarian, I kind of go to understand that, so you always can explain it to me, that I can understand it, and I appreciate that, thank you. All right then, so we know that, so. Let's see what to say. So now we're gonna get into the nitty-gritty, the juicy about the density bonus. So you said that the Washington Greenbush train station, and you the MBTA would tie in with that, right? No, yeah.
What do you mean on the path?
Yeah.
On the path, I don't mean the lane. All kind of-
It's in an MBTA easement. That easement is owned by the MBTA.
Well, I understand that, Karen, but what is, we're not proposing,
Our walkways on our site pave right up to it, so you can walk from our site right onto the path. It's about, I don't know, 5 feet or so of pavement that we have that connects to the path.
And that's in the MBTA right away.
Technically, it's owned by the right of way, that halfway, yeah.
Okay. And then
Seems like you're gonna need them to stay okay.
Seems that,
and the handicap sidewalks and the driftway that Turley proposed. So in my opinion, when I came on this board, sidewalks are not a density bonus. Sidewalks are cost of doing business. You need to have a sidewalk in order to get into your building. So this is where we can get a little creative about what our density bonus is, which is one of the reasons why Karen and I talked about 60% AMI.
I heard what you said.
So the other issue is that we need to talk about a density bonus. I will not, me personally, the board can decide otherwise, do not include sidewalks as part of your density bonus, as part of doing business. And we heard a lot about parking spaces in Mr. Berwick, but I don't see what Mr. Berwick is doing with 7 parking spaces.
So I missed the last part of what you said.
It says that, Mr. Berwick is losing 7 parking spaces is being proposed.
Well, wait a minute, can you finish your density
Right.
before you go into the
Yeah.
Berwick parking? I think that they're two different
Two
issues.
different issues, okay. I didn't know if they could be tied in somehow, but I guess.
What,
So I guess what we're asking is, what are you offering to us?
what are you offering? We're realigning the site at, over $500,000 cost to us for safety is, from fire, police, it's one of the, probably the most dangerous spots on the driftway. This is literally the only opportunity and it took us a considerable period of time because we need Mr. Berwick's cooperation and there's a lot of expense relating to this and we think the alignment of this is a tremendous benefit to the town of Situate. It's a substantial cost for us to do this. We could have done, going back 2 years, we could have done the project without going on this property by pushing the building to the east and bringing it in and having 2 curb cuts. But the angle of this curb cut and these other issues, there's a lot of challenges. As you're well aware, we have an NOI filing in with the Conservation Commission and they have a lot of issues with proximity to the first Heron Brook. So basically, along with, and Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, along with the angle of which this hits the street and the proximity and the offset from the other egresses and entrances on it, it's particularly dangerous. And by doing this, what we're doing is, if you go by there like right now, out to the edge of the pavement, there's parallel parking on both sides of the way down. By having this entrance and whatever, it's eliminating those parking spaces between the edge of the driftway down to this, because now the only entranceway is the realigned entranceway for both properties, and in turn, those, I don't know, is it 5 spots there or 6 spots or something? 7 spots, those then are aligned, it's all safety related and also, actually, it's a potentially better situation having to do with the resource areas under the Wetlands Protection Act. Is that pretty accurate?
Traffic?
It is.
I don't think you're done with density bonus.
That's why I just, can you tell me where Herring Brook is on the other side? It's directly across, right?
Is that blue?
It's that dark black, that's the river.
Some of the lines pretty well, go straight across, I'm trying to see. So, I guess I'm still looking for what is the density bonus, so we know that that's part of, for me, that's part of doing business, we can listen to the rest of the board to hear what they have to say. We know the rules keep changing as it gets more and more dense, we understand that sometimes lost to the table seems to differ.
But no, I yeah, it's the expense, in other words, is demonstrated, we can't get into private things with the abiding owner, what we have to do relating to this, but it's either we do this or we do the entranceway in addition to the other entranceway, and you don't correct this, health and safety issue that existed. And so that's the gist of it. And these are substantial, we've talked about that for 2 years, and I know talking to other town officials, they think it's extremely important that we do this. We can abandon this,
I think that we need to talk.
reconstruct this, move our building, and come up with some other town
So
amenities.
Mr. Arberg, let's tell the public who are just kind of tuning into this, what you're doing is you're removing the grazing driveway that's there.
Correct.
So I think that not everybody, I hear all the time that nobody really knows what's going on in town until they put shovels in the ground. So let's give people, if they're listening to us, an opportunity to know.
I forgot that.
Yeah.
I forgot we had an audience.
Yeah, there you go. But to say, when they're watching tomorrow, a lot of people watch these meetings, so so the people will understand that there will be 2 driveways there, if you're taking out the one that kind of skews off to the left there as you're coming off of Drift Way.
Yep.
The sight line is a little bit, and those are bonuses to the town, there's no doubt about that in my mind. But over and above, is that what you're proposing to us as a density bonus?
Yes, it is.
So we need to decide as a board if we think that's appropriate.
Well, the other thing I'd point out also is that the density which we have is 5 units less than is potentially allowable under the density bonus, so this isn't pushed, in other words, to the edge of this. And also, part of the, and again, I said this isn't, I said, what you say is a density bonus, what you doesn't say is density, this is the most visible. This architecturally is an enormous amount of time and energy spent. As you come around that curve, this is the most visible building on the entire Driftway, particularly in the entrance of it.
No disrespect, Mr. Orberg, everybody building here tells us the very same thing, this is the building that you're gonna see first. And you could, Ms. Keller, you've heard that before, I mean, so 7 New Driftway tells us this, and absolutely, as you're sitting right there on the Driftway, it's gonna change dramatically. If we wanted to look really nicely done,
Yeah.
that's our object here. We know that you're pushing the project, we're trying to make, you do your job, and we're doing our job, is to make sure we have a really nice looking building that comes in. So Mr. Salvo, when we talked about the 60% AMI, if you were going to do that, I personally think that could work towards your density bonus. That's something that's making affordable units even more affordable to the town of Situate. It's not been discussed at all on my board, it's something that Karen and I have discussed. It is in the bylaw that we're allowed to do that. I sat last night listening to the proposed 40B for Old Open Bucket, and I personally would entertain that as part of a density bonus. And you can please weigh in, the board, please weigh in if you think that's a good idea or not. Mr. Lawyer, Rebecca?
I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I think we're sort of waiting to hear back from you on that.
Yeah.
You're waiting to hear it, but I'll tell you right now, knowing this is, it might be able to do with a unit or something, because I know you can't.
We don't want all 4 units.
Yeah, I know
We would
that's
not-
a non
We would not ask you to do all 4 units.
Mhm.
We would ask you to do maybe 2 units out of the 4. That's something to discuss, that's not something that's dropped dead tonight, but Ben, how do you feel about that?
I think that's fair.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think it's fair, at least 2.
Bob? So I mean, that's just something else to think about, food for thought, which is, you know, I mean, we're getting to the point where there's not a lot that we can do to like fix up what's Rebush, because you guys are doing a great job rebuilding it. So, we have this housing crisis that everybody's, you know, yapping at us about. I didn't need to say that to the governor, yapping, but speaking rather harshly about it. And so that would be something to consider as a density. And, like I said, in our bylaw, on page 166, I know where it is, it would tell you that it could be done in a HUD. Would do that. So is that something that you could even entertain?
Say again?
Is that something that you could entertain?
Yeah, but possibility, but what I need to, because the other thing which we have to do is quantify, this is all about, not all about, but it's principally about money. What? You want a grant? What is it you want us to do? Because if that's the case, then we gotta look at redesigning the building and
No.
doing something else.
No, no.
And if we have to, if the entrance we have is, I'm a little, I shouldn't say perplexed or astounded. If that entrance doesn't mean anything, like, you gotta tell us, because we just wasted
Oh, no, I'm
a
not
ton
saying,
of money.
no, I'm not saying that. I think what happens is that we've been doing this for a long time, and other people have not been doing this for a long time, so that's fine. Maybe I always have to keep everybody up to date. And while sidewalks, I told you, we don't use it, this was been on many conversations where we do not include sidewalks as part of the density bonus, as part of doing business now. I would be interested in proposing as part of your density bonus, over and above, when we ask you for money or something for another project. We have asked that in several projects, is that you take you have 4 affordable units, is part of your project. Two of those will go at 80% of AMI, which is the affordable standard rate that the state imposes on us. We're asking you to make 2 of those at 60% of the AMI, it's up to you whichever ones you wanna do that to. Just food for thought, you don't need, just something to think
Well,
about.
I guess what the question is, if we do that, does that satisfy the board? Is because we go to bat and beat up on construction lines and stuff, I want to come back there and say, well, 3 would really be better, and we're gonna vote against you and go redesign your project.
No, we've all said,
I'd rather know that.
I'm good with
we
two.
said two with
No, well,
No, I say two. Everyone else can weigh in.
I think there's a disconnect, Mr. Orber, what do you want? Would this satisfy your density bonus, is this what you're asking me?
Yeah.
And I think it would, yes, no, and,
I'm still concerned about those 7 parking spaces with Mr. Berwick. But
Well,
More
the board
concerned
asked
about
last time to show,
and he showed them, there they are.
yes, but you asked what parking Mr. Berwick was losing.
Right, and he isn't losing any.
That's correct.
if you drive out there right now, from the edge of the driftway,
I saw it earlier this evening. It's
well, there's nothing there, so you're losing those.
How many legal parking spaces from the approved site plan is Mr. Berwick losing?
How many legal parking spaces? Well, we did a debate over what pre-existing non-conforming uses there. That's been there since the 50s.
We have an approved site plan from approximately 2011 that they came in when they redid the river shed and the ice house. And I don't think it allowed parking along the side of the fence, by the brook. It had definitive parking on that plan.
It absolutely did. You lose one of those spaces, which is a 90-degree space adjacent to the ice house with this realignment. But as has been pointed out, there's been a lot of illegal parking, parallel parking along that driveway, which has not been enforced. Those get eliminated and get realigned to this 90-degree space.
So it's a net add for legal parking spaces.
I would say it's a net add for legal parking spaces, yes. If you're looking at, what you're losing with illegal spaces, it's probably a net of 0.
we're not supposed to
But
park
for
in
less,
spaces.
but it corrects a situation that has not been enforced and is continuously being a safety issue.
Yes,
Like
I
a
would
criminal
like it
element
today.
in town.
It's, we live on it tonight, it's crazy.
Private park, right?
Yeah, can I ask a question, because I'm confused.
property owners want to
I
just
can't
work.
just, I can't get the gist of what the board's asking. Is less space for Berkwood good, or is more space good? I can't get the gist of it. In my mind, more space is always a good thing. But am I being told it's a bad thing?
No.
Then what's the issue? I don't understand what the issue is.
Karen, can you clarify that?
No, you've just clarified it.
It's fine.
Okay.
So what you're gonna do is you're gonna take something that's wrong and make it right, hopefully. And
Yeah.
we won't have all that bad behavior continuing.
Right,
And unfortunately, we have to go through all this nonsense to make sure that people do what they're supposed to do,
correct.
unfortunately.
Well, and we're in a unique position. We're the only one people can do that.
I know. But, no, like I said, you're down there now, I mean, you can't just,
It's owned by the property owner, it's
Huh?
his responsibility, right? It's not the town's responsibility to enforce that.
I understand that, but as a practical matter, if you want
It's fine,
a de facto
I don't have
solution,
any
you
problem
have.
with parking spaces.
And you're really doing this to aid Mr. Berwick.
Yeah.
You're helping him out, big time.
Well, legal's good,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
it is.
As long as he doesn't get more seats.
So, and then 17 New Driftway, as you know, is an incredibly popular spot for all kinds of media. I don't know how that ice house ever got through. That is just like, I'm like, how, when you drive down, you're like, what is that thing doing? It's just.
Plus you can have air in the back.
Yeah,
It's
it's just,
everything.
what was crazy, like, how did that ever, I must have been in Cohasset when that happened.
I wasn't around either.
I don't know what
So-
happened.
Quite handy at times.
I'm sure it is if you go into the boat, especially, I know that it's.
Now that Belson's is closed.
No, they're, whatever the harbor, you have to go a little further to get across.
So let me see if I understand correctly what we're doing here. We're basically, for the density bonus, sidewalk not included, striping or whatever not included. It's the two affordable units at 60%.
And the realignment of it.
And you're realignment to the driveway. And which hopefully will again help with parking and flow in general on that part of the Driftway. Since we know that that's gonna come up before us.
And I would also suggest, if this does in fact go forward, that you have some type of, I don't know, you're gonna end up with all these characters from the dance, whatever, they see an empty parking space on your lot, they'll be there.
That would be their.
That's the,
That's
that's
their
the
problem.
I mean,
We're gonna have a
We're
no
not
catch,
trying
we
to-
have a no catch rule.
No taxes.
Soft shoe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. All right.
Rapid release.
Have the spikes that come up, you know.
Oh, yeah,
Those valet
drop and,
license.
drop and roll.
So we know that, you know, as we just discussed, that 17 New Driftway is an incredibly popular spot. And the driveway, are you proposing a seashell parking lot?
So that's what we have for portions of 17 New Driftway existing. And so what we're proposing with this is pavement from this project onto the 17 New Driftway property. But then some of the parking, I believe, is shell, because it's existing shell parking along the ice house. So as you pull in the driveway, this is all paved straight over like this. These 7 parking spaces would be crushed shell parking spaces. That's what it is. Crushed shell is what all of this parking is, and this here around the back side of the ice house. So
But your paving is tying.
So we're paving-
existing paving, all right?
we're paving, this paving tying into his existing paving, you can't really see it here, but this is all existing pavement, ties into existing pavement.
So that's
It's
not
just the parking.
impervious, it's not impervious, the parking, yeah.
No, the parking is shell.
Okay.
The actual spaces are shell.
Yeah. Probably need a different color or something.
Yeah, the site plan calls it out differently, but yeah, those are shell.
Why wouldn't you run the pavement at his property line?
Or would you end it at his property line right here?
Mm-hmm. And then have everything else,
Because it's tying into the existing.
Because it's
pavement.
tying into the
That's
existing
all
pavement.
Yeah,
that's hard to do.
Yeah,
Alright.
if you
And
can
so-
tell that
So right now, he's existing paved all the way out here to Driftway. With our application in front of Conservation Commission, we wanted to show that it was not an increase of impervious surface on Berwick's property. So we maintained the, the square footage of impervious surface with this connection versus what we're removing of asphalt over here on his property. So it's a net of 0 for impervious surface on his.
Will you put up some type of a barrier in front of those parking spaces because they're shelves to prevent people from scooting over?
Sure, so we're actually proposing, I believe it's arborvitae, the landscape plan calls it out, there is screening between those parking spaces in the roadway.
And could I ask you, the shell, that's a conservation issue, the shell or not?
More of a conservation issue, because we're inside the riverfront area, we're limited on the amount of impervious on the site. Again, the planning board, having reviewed that site in 2010, 2011, approved the use of shell for the parking spaces elsewhere. We in keeping.
Okay. We just need to cross that, just so no code breakers, we're gonna talk about parking. That's the next thing, so, right to your right, that's tandem parking. Concerned about that, and I don't object to tandem parking in particular, except you can't back out, because that's a sidewalk, correct?
So the tandem parking here, if you have a 2-bedroom unit, you would be assigned 2 parking
Yeah,
spaces.
I understand that.
So you would control one in the front and the back, and you back out right here, and then you drive out.
Is that assigned parking then?
This is assigned, yes, this would all be dedicated, assigned to your unit number in your apartment.
So kind of like in my own house, when it was time to go to work, one of us had a wood car. And
Exactly.
it got to the point one was going up, first took the car in the back. So
Exactly.
that's
But
what
not
it
for the
is.
front buildings, they're. Is that parking on the right-hand side, right there too?
Yes, it is. Yep, those are single spaces.
And that's where the electric chargers are?
We put 2 electric chargers there.
And those are not assigned the front ones.
No, they're not.
And where are the ADA spaces, Greg?
We have 2, one here and one here.
And not an ADA space over by the second building?
So this is the one that's close to the second building, that's the closest parking space essentially. It's also right next to where the ADA accessible route and ramp is. That was the closest spot.
And the parking, is there sufficient parking in the middle and on the side for building number 1?
We feel that there is. It meets the bylaw, it actually exceeds what the bylaw requirement is. In addition to this, keep in mind, there's also, there's an additional 4 spaces inside the building and garage spaces as well, which should be dedicated.
And those are
Spaces.
assigned as well?
Those are assigned as well, yes.
I mean, my concern is that, and it's an enforcement type of issue, that even though these tandem parking spaces are assigned, I just have a real hard time with it in this type of capacity, if you will. It's one thing with an accessory apartment or whatever, and you have tandem parking, that's a given, because they're right there. And you could end up with somebody in building number 1 who's decided that they're gonna, put their car over in the corner and leave it there.
Well, I think that's a,
Well, they could
That's
I think it'd just be an enforcement issue.
I
know.
As long as they're assigned and the unit holders know who they are, and it is what it is.
and that's
Somebody
part,
gets stuck, they're gonna have to deal with it, right?
that's part of the deed and all that kind of stuff, right, that's all.
The thing is, as long as they're assigned,
Karen,
right?
can you explain the parking by the EV, then you have the loading and the dumpster? And does note say that there's 2 ADA parking spaces there too?
The plans show that there are 2 ADA parking spaces right here. Over here are the 2 EV parking spaces. We have a loading zone, dedicated loading zone here for your Amazon truck and your deliveries. The dumpster is located right there in a fenced-in enclosure.
And where's your snow going?
Sure. This is a large area for snow capacity right here that we've dedicated on the site plans.
Can I ask you a question, Greg? I remember you coming into where I live and you asked me where my dumpster was, and I told you we don't have a dumpster.
Yeah.
They live literally a half a mile from a transfer station, not the dump. Is that just something that is required, that people will not go to the transfer station? Cultural thing? I don't know.
We've done it where individual unit owners are required to take care of their own trash.
You should go to the dumpster where my office
What?
is. You usually go to the dumpster where my office.
You're not supposed to say that, that's it. You know, the place it doesn't really matter.
I think I wanna say it's one of the requirements that you have is dedicated dumpster space.
But you don't run into, most of the units are gonna go to the transfer station, but then you're gonna have some of them who will contract out, so you get trash trucks in it like you do at your place all the time.
You think that it was all come with the same day? They can't seem to get that together, it's not dumpster spots.
Yeah, with a dumpster, like you can forbid contract pickup, so.
Yeah, we don't have a dumpster, that's the problem, so,
Yeah, these aren't individual unit owners, I believe, it's all one association that owns the building, so they'll contract a dumpster service for the building.
So there will be HOA entities, has it been decided if these are rental or?
No, these gonna be rentals, yeah.
Okay.
Not really, it's just a trample.
so there's not an HOA, it's just part of your rental agreement.
Is that the case for both buildings?
Yes, it's all one
Yes.
property.
So do we have any other questions? I'm still a little confused about the MBTA, I don't know if we need.
Sure, so I mean, the MBTA public walking path is right here, we're literally connecting, I think in two or three locations, 1, 2, 3 locations, I guess, with our site sidewalks to that. I don't anticipate any issues with them. We've connected to that sidewalk, that pathway at the 50 Country Way project. We also had discussions with Mr. Ford's property at the end of Ford Place. You know, in the event that we couldn't connect to them, we could continue our path on our property directly adjacent and parallel with theirs to get you down to the sidewalk, where then you could walk down their public path. It's a little redundant, ridiculous. I don't anticipate an issue connecting.
Yeah, it'd be like a Monty
Make any
Python.
sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
So one of the things that I can mean to you is to go, do you know offhand if those bollards are illuminated? Do you know if they work?
Do they work? I don't know the answer. I know they're illuminated bollards, but I don't know.
They're
if they-
illuminated, but I don't remember seeing them on.
Okay, and every night I said, I should go down there about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I know they're not illuminated, and I'm like, I don't want to go down there at night, it's kind of scary, but, so you don't know offhand, they're supposed to be illuminated, that's something just for us to know.
They are illuminated.
They are,
Yeah,
okay.
they are illuminated.
But is it just the ones up by 50 Country Way, or does it go all the way down?
It's the ones by the wall are on at night.
All of them, the whole length?
Yes.
That's as it should be.
We don't know who owns all of those.
So we were that was one of our to-do lists, is to find out who owns the lights and see, make sure that they are illuminated. Karen?
I think you were gonna get to traffic before you got to drainage and John's report.
So your traffic engineers here, our traffic engineers here.
Right.
We would like to hear from Ms. Braun first. Kristen?
Yeah, thanks for everyone for having me tonight. Again, just for the record, Kirsten Braun with Chapel Engineering. I'm the traffic peer reviewer for the project. So most of our outstanding comments were addressed in the last submittal from the applicant. They provided a whole updated traffic study with the expanded study area as well as new traffic counts. We really just had some minor additional comments. The first one pertaining to sight distances at the sight lines at the driveway. We did note that there was some landscaping within the site triangles, so we just asked for the applicant to confirm that this landscaping is 2.5 feet in height or less, so that they don't impede any sight lines. And we also asked that any snow within these site triangles also be removed to ensure they don't impede on any driver visibility leaving the site. Aside from that, we just did have one more comment. We did meet with the applicant yesterday, as well as Karen. We just want to confirm that the fire department has agreed that they have adequate accessibility to all sides of the buildings. So that was our last outstanding comment. Aside from that, though, really the new submittal really addressed everything that we had commented on originally.
Thank you. We do have a comment from.
So I did speak to the deputy chief today, whose last comment said he had no issue, and he confirms he has no issue that they will be fighting this fire from Driftway or McDonald Terrace if, if that has to happen. The building is sprinklered, but he confirmed he has no comment, everything is fine.
Is there a fire hydrant around there?
Yes, there's gonna be a relocated gonna be a new hydrant at the beginning, at the entrance.
Hi, yes, as Kirsten said, we did meet yesterday, so we feel comfortable as well with issues being addressed. Just to speak to the sightline issue, we would certainly keep landscaping below the 2.5 feet, make sure that is clear, and I mean, it's been talked about a little bit, but there's a significant improvement with the sightlines here with the new driveway configuration. I know that was a little bit ad nauseum spoken about here, but the 90-degree angle certainly clears up a lot of issues, especially looking to the right, what lanes into the site. So we feel there's a significant improvement there. And also the driveway has been pushed really as close to the alignment across the way as it can be. So again, another nice improvement as part of the project. Happy to go into any level of detail about the traffic analysis, but as Kirsten said, we did update everything based on the letter that was provided to us at the end of last year.
So we all know, we all understand that traffic's getting a little easy out there. Or did you see any more traffic on Driftway?
No, it's always the same when people come back at night from work, going towards the Rotary. But it's been like that since the Rotary,
And the train can.
when the train.
So, I mean, we expect a whole lot more traffic. I have no idea. I seem to leave my house except to come here. I don't know. Just.
Traffic is increasing because every kid in this town over the age of 16 has a car.
They're very well motivated.
So, what?
No, I'm saying it's true.
It's true, and I see it on Countryway, and the big.
Is that some new revelation?
What?
That is not big money. Little kids see people driving.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, because they're always driving, but the thing that disturbs me more than anything else are the big trucks.
Yeah.
There's not too much you can do about that. And they're huge, and they go too fast, but that's enforcement and not your issue.
So we're waiting to hear from our consulting engineer. Good evening, Mr. Chesia, how are you?
Good, so I know you have my letter and I did the abbreviated summary list, which you've already covered probably 75% of with the other discussion that you had. One thing I'm not sure of, I'm not sure traffic guys are either, but so these EV charger things, when we did it at the gas station, does any of them have to be accessible? I thought it depends. I think if you read up on it, if you get funding, which you can get to put them in, is what they did at the gas station, like there's a supplemental state funding for the EV chargers. If you use that, one of them has to be accessible. So that's something I think that you may need to address.
Okay.
And most people apply for the funding because why wouldn't you?
Right.
It's cheaper.
But it doesn't have to be a dedicated handicap space.
Right, but it has to be accessible.
It has to be accessible.
Which means though that the spacing's a little different.
Has to be
Right.
water.
Right,
And
exactly.
you have to have the crosshatch thing. So, and I don't know if the board has an opinion on that, but it's something you probably wanna nail down now. Because you have to change the plan, you want to change it.
What is the plan for EV charging for you?
They're not handicap accessible right now, obviously.
No, I mean, I'm asking them whether they're planning to access.
So, John, can I ask you a question? From the existing, like, I'm looking at the EV spot that's the furthest to, I guess, be to the north. How much wider is it practically? Is that like another 4 feet wide, something like
You
that?
put that strip, yeah.
Yeah, and so what I'm saying is there's green space right to the, right to the north of that. Couldn't you,
I'm not saying you can't do it, I'm asking the question of do you have to do it? And if you have to do it, you might as well do it now.
yeah, if it isn't strictly dedicated to that, is that something you think, Craig?
So I read John's comment when it came in.
Yeah.
I'm not aware that it's a regulation to do it. Like you said, though, if you're applying and getting grant funding, maybe it's a requirement of that funding
It is.
mechanism.
It is a
So-
requirement of the grant, yeah.
Okay, so requirement of the grant, so I mean, if we're going for the grant, my first thoughts are, we would have to either put in a 5-foot striped area adjacent to one of the EV stations to make it ADA accessible, or the other alternative would be to move one of our, or two of our EV stations to the 2 parking spaces that are adjacent to the proposed handicap spaces. Essentially put the station right on the stripe that differentiates those two so that you could charge either vehicle and it's an already existing ADA handicap accessible space. So that's what I see us probably doing, is moving those 2 locations over to be adjacent to the handicap anyways.
That makes sense.
So that way you got 4 spaces now that potentially could charge off of it.
Then you don't interfere with your dumpster, because that's right there.
I'm just raising it as a question and I didn't have an answer for it, I just thought it would be something that you might wanna know about or think about, and because we did have an issue with it over it, I mean, they striped them so that like no one else could use them first.
And they found out at the last minute, so, you
Yeah.
know,
And they had already painted it and it was.
because of the grant program.
Right. So I think that's a question there. Drainage, there's not really a heck of a lot at this point. I mean, we all know, people that are from around here know that that's pretty, it's next to sand and gravel, so it's a sand and gravel area that's got pretty good soils. There's a issue relative to bypass on the catch basin grade. They did some calculations, but they were for more of a low point than a on grade one. I recommend if the project gets approved that you have, and I think you put it as a boilerplate anyway, that the excavation gets checked. I mean, there's, who knows what's going on there, but it's kind of a landscape place, and that sometimes means things could be buried and you find something that you didn't expect. It's always a possibility around here. The other issue so there's pervious paver walkways proposed, but they're not asking for any credit from the TSS removal. The detail, just given other issues that have happened with pervious pavers. Should specify the joints, because the last time that somebody put in the stuff, the impervious filler in between, so they didn't work. The thickness of the gravel underneath, if you want to get credit for it being a real pervious paver, I don't know that it's quite enough stone, but that's something that the board may want to think about. We talked about the SWIP. I think you do have to have something for construction phase runoff. Right now, there's a big sort of hole in the middle where the landscape area is, and if you blast open that, the water's gonna go towards drip rates. You're gonna have to do something to take care of that during the process. I think other than that, I mean, basically you hit on the other issues. The only things I listed that you didn't talk about is amenity space in public realm. Things which, if there's an opinion of the board that they should know about, I would recommend you give it to them so that they don't come back and then you bring it up and it's another thing to deal with.
So what is your amenity space here?
The majority of it is common yard and garden space. We're required to have, 20% of the site as amenity space, and we have a little over 9,000 square feet for compliance with that. 9,772 square feet as common yard and garden.
And that's your other building?
It's on the plan somewhere, you might have, it's on one of the plans.
We hatched it on the landscaping plan, it's a colored hatched.
Do you think that's sufficient? Is everybody seeing?
I don't see what else they could do.
No, there's not a whole lot you can do down there. Carmen, Steve.
No, I think it's fine.
Are there gonna be any benches or anything like that outside for people to sit in?
Yeah, I think we were proposing benches along the walkways on the site, those are depicted on the site plan as well.
And mandatory bike rack and all that stuff.
That's included on the site
That's
plan.
on it.
Yep. That's there.
Because then my biggest concern was those tandem parking spaces, but since you told me that they're gonna be assigned, and then that's an internal issue that they take care of in-house.
Question for you, just in terms of stormwater management. If you build out, kind of building one and the parking lot and all that kind of stuff before you do anything with the second building, I guess I'm asking John, are we still able to manage the stormwater?
So that, I think that the bigger issue might be managing the stormwater well you're building building one. Once building one and the parking lot's in, the main issue would be keeping dirt out of the system that you just built. Because all of the drainage would be in, with the exception of tying in the roof.
So the drainage on the back lot that hasn't been addressed yet, but when they start earth moving and all that kind of stuff,
Right.
we'll still be able to manage that?
So I would think so. They tear the building down, they probably have a hole where the foundation is, and once the foundation's poured near the slab, it would run off into the catch basins most likely that are picking up the stuff anyway, because there's two low point catch basins essentially on that island, that's sort of like a big I in the middle there, or an H. The one to the left has a catch basin at either end, so you'd have to put a silt stack in the catch basin, you'd have to put some erosion control around the area where they take the house down, but there'd probably be a stub already there to tie the roof into. And I had less of a concern with runoff during construction of building two than I do with building one during construction. But if they're gonna pave the entire parking lot, the only other things relative to the construction phase is there's gotta be a place for the workers to go. So depending upon how the occupancy of building one goes, I know that the law office wants to go in, but if all of the whole thing's occupied, you're gonna have more uses, and then you might have some conflicts there. If it's not all, if it's just as soon as the lawyer's office moves, they might still be renting the other ones. That might be better from a timing point of view, because when you're building a building like that, there's a lot of vehicles parked to build them, as we know. So
What
they
was
need
the plan?
spaces.
I'm asking, what was the plan
Well,
for construction parking?
well, can I ask a question? Jamie, how many bedrooms in the small building?
Smaller building of 12 bedrooms.
12 bedrooms. And so, until that building's finished, there is no parking requirement for 12 bedrooms. And so, that's the obvious answer. And the tandem parking space area and all that, that's, talk about construction vehicles, it's custom made for that kind of stuff.
Is it enough?
Well, we don't have 12 bedroom renters.
No, I'm saying, is it enough while you're constructing?
Like, is it big enough
Not asking about bedroom
to
rental.
hold your equipment?
Yes, it will be.
Okay, that's what you need to know. But you can't park under it, right, so you have to make sure you can't park on the top terrace, so maybe yes, you will do that, space. I know this has been a long time coming, but how do we feel?
Can I ask another question?
Sure.
So during construction, and I'm thinking you've already addressed this, but you looked at the construction water management?
They
Stormwater
need to
management?
do that. That has not been done.
Okay.
That's one of my comments, is that that aspect has not been really addressed. The construction phase, water management hasn't been addressed.
Our experience is that's where all the major problems happen. So you definitely want to
I
have.
mean, they have the benefit of it being in this part of town where it's sandy soil, so you don't get as much runoff as you do in a lot of other places. But I think it's still a sensitive area, everything is gonna go right into Driftway, and it needs to be considered in the design as to how you do that, and there's not a lot of extra space to do stuff. So it is an important factor.
Thank you.
Does Carol have anything further that she wants to talk about? Ross?
Yeah, no, almost there.
So you have a motion?
I move to accept the applicant's request to continue the public hearing for, unless it's a
Public comment, sorry.
public comment. Does anybody want to comment?
We have no one in the room, so
So,
if there's anyone online that would like to make public comment, now would be the time. You can raise your hand or hit *9 if you're by phone, and we will accept your comment at this time.
I promise this at all, it's Bill, I know it's you.
I don't see any public comment.
I move to accept the applicant's request to continue the public hearing for site plan administrative review and special permit for a mixed-use building, a multifamily building, and stormwater permit in the Village Center and Neighborhood District, Greenbush Gateway District, Greenbush Village Center Sub-District and Gateway Business District, BCN, GVC, and GWB until May 11th, 2023 at 6:30 PM, and to continue the time for action for filing with the town clerk until June 23rd, 2023.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you Tuesday night.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's give everybody a little bit time. We have a Form A and R plan. Thank you, gentlemen, good night, see you soon. 525 Country Way, assessors map, block 26-2-4.
All right, so the applicant is not coming tonight. This is a very simple Form A. It's just both lots have access and frontage. They're just switching an internal lot line. So one has a little bit more of a backyard. So I would recommend.
And you have later.
I move to endorse as approval under the subdivision control law not required, a plan of land 525 Country Way and 4 Arbor Drive, Situate, Mass. 02066, prepared by Land Mapping Inc., Patrick Rosengrave, registered land surveyor, for applicant/owner Jonathan and Carly Marsh, dated January 30th, 2023, as the division of the tract of land shown on the accompanying plan is not a subdivision because it shows a proposed conveyance or change in a lot line which does not alter the existing frontage as required under the Situate zoning bylaw. No new buildable lots are proposed.
Second. All in favor? Correspondence, administrative items.
Minutes. I move to approve the meeting minutes for February 23rd, 2023.
For a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then do we spend money? Okay.
I move to approve the requisition of $1,530 to Tech Inc. for peer review services for Laurelwood lots 3, 4, and 5 for $73.99 to Schwab Inc. for ink pads, for $190 to Brocco Trust for training seminar, for $367.50 to Horsley Witten for peer review services for Seaside and Situate.
For a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Liaison reports.
I went to the selectmen and unfortunately I left too early. But basically looks as if the deal of going forward with Cohasset with the sewer isn't gonna happen. So, they're in the process, they approved money to do more I&I and what have you down on Oceanside and other streets. One of the things that they discovered when they did Cedar Point, that many of the laterals were broken.
From the water.
Well, they were also 40, 50 years old, you know. And so when they go through this next phase, they're going to camera everything. And if they find that somebody has a lateral that needs to be replaced, it's gonna have to be replaced.
And who pays for that?
Well, see, that's the big issue. If your septic system failed while you lived there, you'd have to fix it. So
Just a question.
it's a good question. I asked that question. I also asked about the $3 million pipe that runs under the railroad bed that's now almost 20 years old. It goes from, I think, not sure where, up to North Situate. And Kevin Caffrey says he's really frightened by it because nobody's looked at it. And if anything happened, and you know, the T and so that was that. That's all I know about that.
So I went to two meetings on Tuesday to deal with Pier 44. And wowza, we really need to keep eyes on this. This is like so over-engineered. It's a great idea. They don't have any idea how much it's gonna cost. They're gonna come to town meeting and they're gonna ask for $300,000 from CPC. You can say yea or nay. When you ask them how much the permitting costs, they don't know. They have to do chapter 91, they have to do FEMA, they have to do all kinds of stuff because it's on the waterfront. It is a beautiful idea. I think it's way over-engineered for what we have. They should take the building down is over $700,000 and nobody talks about that at all. It's just like, oops. And that's it, and then what's inside there. Well, there's refrigeration, there's all kinds of stuff in there and it's. I know, that's what I said. Because I wonder if it has this full of asbestos, was it so cool?
Could be.
They should have been able to test that.
Yeah, well, they really can't tell you. They're very nice people, but they don't have a lot of really hard answers to hard questions. I think the biggest idea is that they want, so you have this structure, there's gonna be a building, and they can't do a building, so maybe it's gonna be open for pavilion, which is huge for 100 people, because they think we're gonna have concerts there in the middle of a residential area, but whatever.
Where are they gonna park?
Well, there's not a lot of parking, so that's the other issue. So the interesting comment was made by the young man Schuyler from CPC, who said, we're not building a parking lot, we're building a park. So in the morning when I went at 11 o'clock, there were like 25 to 30 people. Obviously, all neighbors who lived there forever will tell you how much the water comes and how windy it is and whatnot. They were not concerned about parking. Their concern was that they wanted someplace to sit on their way from Cole Parkway to the lighthouse, to be able to have a tree to sit under on a bench. They just want a park. At night, they want a pavilion.
Like a gazebo?
Yeah, much bigger. So actually, did you take the survey? They had 1,400 people respond to the survey, and you couldn't take it twice. So it was interesting. And they gave 3 options for gazebo. One was this natural wave, one was a flat roof, and the other one was that standing gable. And I think it's a nice idea, but it's huge. It's an acre of land, apparently. And the interesting thing about it is that my personal opinion is their preferred design, if you want to say, is if you're looking at Pier 44 to the water, they want the pavilion to be more over to the left. So you can see the lighthouse. And they want to put a walkout pier from what is now essentially the parking lot on the right-hand side. But that water is privately owned to the low water mark by Mr. Bowman. So I don't know how they're ever gonna get around this. Oh, we're gonna make an agreement. I don't know how that works.
that'll take them a very long time,
Well, it,
because not that they need permission.
Yeah.
They're gonna need permission of the governor to,
Yeah. which,
which is because it's chapter 91.
so in the evening meeting, after listening to everybody talk, and everybody was very excited, I brought up that point, I said, part of the problem is that once you go into the water, it takes years and that stuff, it costs a lot of money. And I said to them, when you come to town meeting, you are gonna need a drop dead number of how much it's gonna cost for permitting. And she said to me, well, how do I estimate that? I don't know, I'm not the engineer or the architect. So I think it's a wonderful idea, but I think we really need to keep eyes on this. It's really, it could get really out of control really fast.
Well, they probably got a plan to do it without the pier and then, beat their way through that process, which will take them, as you said, years.
So it's nice, if you look at it, it has this boardwalk, and it's very attractive, but again, and it was funny because one of the neighbors said, have you ever come here in summertime? And the young girl said, well, no, because then what we're doing is it's like October. And he said, well, you keep telling us about these great views we're gonna have, the harbor is full of boats, you can't see anything else, you're just gonna be looking at boats. The other thing, of course, is the kayaking that they've been pushing for years, but you have 2 marinas on either side. So just kind of keep your eye open for that. And then I went to the 40B hearing last night. Andy McCary runs a really tight meeting. They're ready to write a decision on that in April.
For which one?
For over about for the 40B.
Oh, on the west end.
24 units. They're having some kind of a breakout meeting between the principals, and then they're gonna come, I want to say April 24th or something, with a proposal for the town. So we'll see how that works. It's interesting. It's, it would be nice, I think, but it's in a weird place where we can't say what they do with their property. That's all. It's not a lot. It's, people are really concerned about traffic, and apparently there's a development going in Wallow, but on the other side of the intersection.
How many houses in that one, Karen?
26.
I think.
Yeah. And so this project originally started at 38, then went to 32, now it's down to 24. So it's manageable.
Is it rental or condo?
I don't know that they're decided.
They're duplex type units.
Yeah.
No, they're individual units.
But there were standalone units.
Yeah, now all individual units, and I want to say, Ian, that they are owner occupied. So, well, like I said, they keep talking about how many houses.
No, all 24 units will be affordable, all?
No,
Only 6. What? 25%, that's
25%.
required.
Isn't that wonderful? At $2,000 a pop. Or however much.
well, again, it was interesting, so I think that if they see it was successful in having Mr. Sullivan give us 2 and 60%, this could be, we could maybe see this as a precedent-setting thing that we're trying. Everybody's aware that we need affordable housing. So,
I would have think that they would have discussed that already, because
I don't know that that's not discussed in-house.
that would have affected the finances
Yeah.
for 40B.
So they seem to have everything as under control as they can. They look like nice houses. I mean, but we know that never usually, but they still in the beaches. Karen, do you have a report for us?
We met with our state representatives on Monday on the MBTA compliance. I thought it was a very good meeting. They understood that, our concern about mixed use not being counted. They understand the legislation. They understand that we're an old community hemmed in by wetlands, salt marsh, floodplain, zone A, zone 2. They understand that we have infrastructure issues. And so they are going to be writing letters to DHCD on our behalf. And so I've had a couple follow-up phone conversations with people from Senator O'Connor's office since then, and they're looking to clarify, the issues. So I think that that's good. As part of that meeting, when we indicated that we had some infrastructure issues, I indicated the town is going to be applying for some MassWorks grants. The town applied for some One Stop for Growth, and we're told that we would best be suited for MassWorks grants for one of them will be an inflow and infiltration project. And so they offered to write a joint letter in support of the MassWorks application. So that is very good from that aspect. I've asked several of the project attorneys to write letters. For the first MassWorks grant for Cedar Point, Toll Brothers and the Drew Company was leveraged against it. I've asked for letters from 61 New Driftway and 7 New Driftway. Jim Boudreau was gonna ask for one from 33 New Driftway. So that is all extremely good news. Our action plan is still under review for the MBTA compliance. From what we got this week, it appears that some communities where you have inclusionary zoning, I'm not sure they really ever thought a lot about inclusionary zoning, but a bunch of those communities still haven't got their action plans approved, and we're wonderful. So they are working on approving communities. So I think that's all good news. So I think it's a wait and see at the moment, and before, we don't have to make any decisions on how we proceed for a while. Meeting with,
Did they discuss the potential change to the law?
no, we didn't discuss a potential change to the law because we kind of all felt that the law says multifamily housing is 3 or more units, and mixed use, when you have mixed use, it is multifamily housing. So we kind of felt that it was already there, but this maybe needs to be clarified, not by changing necessarily the law, but maybe some verbiage in the guidelines from DHCD or something like that. But both representatives fully understood what we were saying, that, you've got to be able to count this mixed use.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, we have a pedestrian frontage zone by our mixed use, so that's requiring mixed use. It's requiring commercial on the first floor, so this is what MAPC tells us is why it's not being counted. And there's been no,
But that's not in the law, then, is what you're saying.
right, it's not in the law.
Oh.
It's not in the law, so that's,
Okay,
I
I
mean,
thought it
so-
was in the law.
No, it's
No,
really like
it's-
an
the
interpretation.
law says, right, it's all, and Senator O'Connor said they left vagaries of the law on purpose, but, so DHCD could run with the regulations, but, now there seems to be a lot of problems with some of the interpretations. And so I think they're only constituents who are having some issues with the language.
It hits the paper almost every week. The
Right,
Globe on Sunday. Middleborough feels that they have met their 10% and so on and so on. They feel they don't want any part of it. And then Brookline is all up in arms.
Cohasset was gonna shut their train station down, that's how they.
That's how they would deal with it.
Anyway. It's interesting, because I've done nothing but read about this for weeks,
The whole
and,
thing is I'm
interagencies
will not be satisfied.
don't use the same terminology. So Mass Housing says you can't use Mass Housing Partnership says you can't use mixed use, DHCD says you can't, and it's still the same, like, it's crazy, they all have to get the same vocabulary.
I think we see what they can come up with. They seem to think that there may have, that perhaps with the new change in governor, you know, she wants to appoint a housing person, that things are just moving a little slow right now until that person gets named and in and up to speed. Then they feel that perhaps the time is going to be right for this to, for something to come down, because rapid transit communities, which are required to have 25%, have to comply by the end of this year.
Yeah.
That's not a long time.
So when you're saying mixed use, you're just saying if it's got like a store underneath it and not counting it? That's every, like, that's all over the city, that's the way all these things, that's all New York City, just think about that, there's always a
So-
store, a pizza place, and then there's apartments up, so they're not counting that,
Well,
which
I mean,
makes just no sense.
right.
Well, I think what you're saying is that, at least if I can interpret this right, is that the law doesn't say that.
Right.
Somebody at
The-
DHCD
The
has interpreted
guidelines are saying
that, right?
that, right.
So it's really pushing back against the guidelines, right?
It's pushing back against the, right.
And it
I'm
would
not
help to
sure.
have them,
I'm not sure if it's just us because we have a pedestrian frontage zone, we're requiring mixed use.
Right.
Because we want a vibrant area.
Yeah.
That's the right thing for redevelopment and to have people there all the time. So this is what we're gonna try to shake out. Maybe one of the things in the end we have to do against our better judgment is to take away the pedestrian frontage zone.
no, it's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? So I
But,
mean,
you know, it's the zoning that was created was done for a reason, and it was good for Situate, but.
And you did that zoning based on what the law was, not what the guidelines were.
Right, exactly.
So
So,
I'm concerned that there were no waivers in this, that's what their concern was, that there's no waiver application.
and one community is not equal. You know, we made a big point of saying Situate is a unique community. We don't wanna be Weymouth, we don't wanna be Quincy, not that those are bad places. But every town on the South Shore has a lot of unique characteristics, and that needs to be respected in all of this.
Well, one of the things, and this may or may not be off track, but Mayor Wu was able to get the first step of rent control in Boston. And that makes sense. I read in the paper, again, a woman with 2 children had to move out of her house, apartment, she had been there for years, to another part of the city because the landlord upped her rent by $700 a month. And this is what's happening, that they're getting pushed out of these apartments. But creating more apartments, affordable apartments at $2,000 a month doesn't do it either. You can't afford them. I'm not sure where we're gonna go or how we're gonna get there.
Well, and that's why after I talked to the Drew company's working on their affordable units, and that's why when I talked to the woman at, Metro West, I asked her, how do you get more affordable? And the way to do it is to, have some of the units, not all at 80% AMI, have it at a different threshold. And she's the one who recommended it like 60 because that's a standard HUD calculation. So that's why I brought it up, because you keep saying you want these units more affordable, and we're in the Boston region and they're not getting affordable.
They're getting
The HUD units, all the prices are set in April, and that's, what they go by.
Thank you.
So I'm having a meeting with Toll Brothers tomorrow. It's been indicated that they want to be out of the site, I've heard by the end of May. I'm thinking that's a little, I'm not sure how all the work that I think needs to get done is gonna get done in that time frame, but we'll find out after, tomorrow. You know, I guess the nature trail seems to be a big cause of concern. It never seemed really stabilized. And I've been getting pictures from the homeowners association this week that shows they're using the plastic edging on the edge of the nature trail, butting right up to big landscape timbers. So I intend to ask about that tomorrow.
And the sidewalk that Rebecca tripped on.
Well, yeah, they have to put the top coats on everything.
Yeah.
And
Well, just also, if you were trying to, it is 55 and older, if you had
Yeah.
somebody in a wheelchair, it's very difficult, that's
it's very good,
horrendous.
right? No, yeah.
And those cobblestones lining the sides of the roads,
That's
ridiculous.
correct.
Ridiculous.
Well,
Seemed like a nice idea, but.
it seemed like a nice idea, we were hoodwinked, and what can I say? I mean, they're going around and setting them all in setting them all in concrete. They were not initially set in concrete because they knew they were gonna be disrupted during the construction. So,
Another lesson learned.
Yeah, well, they look like teeth.
so I have had a couple of discussions with, town council this week. And town council does not believe that, the water line being placed in Laurelwood requires a modification. So I've asked for that in writing, and, we'll go from there.
So any request that we get from people at Warrenwood should be directed to the owner or the lawyer.
Yeah, I mean, we're not taking, and we will take no complaints. I mean, we will tell them this is the road in situ is private road. You can either make your complaints to Mr. Simeone or call the Norwell Water Department, but town of Situate, it's a private road. Town council suggested that I send a letter to Mr. Simeone saying this subdivision's gone on way too long, when are you gonna finish it? So I will draft some type of a letter, and I said I think it really should come from you, town council.
It's 25 years.
It was approved in '98. So I think that's where we are. Next meeting is gonna be a very busy meeting with, we have 61 New Driftway, we have 2 accessory dwellings, and we have 3 stormwater permits.
There you go. Anybody else have anything? Yes, Mr.
Just an announcement, there's gonna be a community outreach meeting on April 12th at the senior center from 6 to 8, for the nonprofit that's talking about putting a statue, on Boston Common. And, it'll be with the sculptor and the Connors, Memorial people.
That's at the senior center.
The senior center, April 12th, 6 to 8 p.m. And did anybody know that Boston Common was designed by Frederick Olmsted?
Yes.
I just learned that, and now I've read all of the file on that build, it's interesting.
Oh, I love it. So, yeah, that was one of his brief roles in his later years.
He did a lot, yeah, it's all on the Library of Congress website.
That's fine, that's fine, okay.
Okay, sure, sorry.
I can
Anything
wait till it's
else?
done, but.
And
We'll entertain a motion
to adjourn?
to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
I.
Aye. Thank you.